Now, with Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking a short time ago, he reestablished his obligation is to the Israeli people. Early reports spoke of an Israeli troop withdrawal from Gaza within 24 hours. Now we're going to try and sort it all out. We're being joined by Nathan Miller. He's a former director of speechwriting for Israel's permanent mission to the UN and currently a principal at Miller Inc., a strategic communication firm based in Los Angeles. Thanks very much for joining us, Nathan. A lot to talk about. Firstly, let's get right to what Benjamin Netanyahu said. Is this what you expected him to say, that they're basically going to scale back operations? They're still going to use the Navy, still going to use artillery and mortars fired into Gaza?
Thanks for having me. I think it's important to start with some context here about what's happened over the past couple days. Israel agreed to a ceasefire for the sixth time, and Hamas, for the sixth time, refused to abide by the terms of that ceasefire, broke it, used it to launch an attack on Israeli soldiers who in Rafah, and took an Israeli soldier captive.
Right, Nathan. We're going to get to that, but let's first focus on what just happened a short time ago and kind of put that into perspective.
Sure. Well, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is basically saying we're not going to continue having a ceasefire talk with Hamas in Egypt. Instead, Israel is going to take its security into its own hands. I think, from the outset of this operation, he's been very clear that his goal was to destroy the tunnels and the rocket stockpiles that Hamas and other Palestinian terrorists have in Gaza. The military has made clear that those stockpiles have been depleted, and there's been major damage to that infrastructure, which Hamas spent nearly $100 million, an estimate of about $100 million, building up that terrorist infrastructure, those tunnels. So they've dealt a severe blow to that infrastructure, and they're now redeploying to other areas some of those troops who were in dealing with that infrastructure. So, but they're going to continue the operation.
Let's talk about one thing that Israel has said: quiet coming in, quiet going out. And to pick up on what you were talking about, Hamas says it is not holding an Israeli soldier that was apparently either abducted or possibly killed during what was supposed to be a ceasefire. What does that do to the whole situation?
Well, I think just to respond to that, what Hamas says is usually, as they've demonstrated over the past month, is not particularly relevant. It's clear that a soldier was abducted. His whereabouts are unknown, but whether or not Hamas has him, I'm not going to take what they say at face value. I would say that within Israel, there's a strong commitment to return lost soldiers. It's something that's very important to the people, as everyone goes to the army, and people, a promise that Israel makes to its citizens is when they take their children.
They have a history of leaving no stone unturned. There's no question about that. If we look back about turning over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners for one soldier. So do you think this is really going to up the stakes and make Israel dig in further, whereas perhaps they would have withdrawn those ground troops? Now they have no reason to.
I think they'll continue. I think the Prime Minister is very clear that he's not turning his back on the soldier. He's going to continue operations to find him. I will say that the Israeli government has been very clear about the need to bring security to the people, and that's been the first and foremost priority of the government. So I think this redeployment across the border will be, I think they're going to continue to operate as they deem necessary to make sure that rockets are not continuing to fire onto Israeli civilians, and that tunnel infrastructure, which terrorists were using to go under the border and into Israeli dining rooms and kibbutzim and to launch major attacks, that those will be taken care of.
Okay, Nathan Miller, thanks very much for joining us. We could talk about a great deal more, but we appreciate your time on this Saturday afternoon.